So we are on location.
We are.
Location of the Battle of the Little Bighorn.
National Monument.
National Monument.
It's a national
Thank
park.
you, yes.
So you do get in free if you have a National Parks Pass, which is good.
Otherwise, it's $25 a car.
And we've already gone through. We didn't know exactly what to expect because of the pandemic. The museum is closed, but let me tell you, you all are in for a treat because it is beautiful scenery, very historic, very sad, and hopefully we can bring some history and information to you.
And some of the information may be a little surprising.
Yes.
So we'll share that too. And it's a very emotional place to be. For the death of the Indians.
Yes, and the cavalry, the men.
And George Custer. Well, of course, what you remember so much is George Custer and his defeat here and all of the U.S. soldiers, but Indians lost their lives too.
Yes.
And so we want to bring both of
the viewpoint on each side.
those viewpoints to you. Yeah, we sure do. So
get in the truck and let's go.
Let's go. When you first enter the National Monument, you come to this cemetery, which is well, it reminds you of any national cemetery where veterans are buried, and you might initially think this is where those who died in the Battle of the Little Bighorn would be buried, but that's not the case. This is a cemetery for veterans all the way up through to and including the Vietnam War.
It's so sad to see all of these white stones. We've seen them from Normandy Beach and to Washington, D.C. in the National Monument, and it always pricks my heart whenever I see these places of these young people that have given their lives.
The very next place you come to is the actual spot where the soldiers who fell in the battle are buried. Initially, they were buried where they fell, but in 1881, their remains were dug up and brought here to be at this memorial.
I think there was over 220 of the people, and their names are all listed on this memorial.
These white headstones actually represent where each of the soldiers fell.
The drive is 4.5 miles long, and you'll see these white headstones scattered throughout all the hillsides. It's really sad, and especially to know that these were very young men. There are markers alongside the road, all along, just like this. This tells about the Indian headstones.
The red headstone marks the exact spot where an Indian fell.
There were actually no winners in this battle. It happened because this territory was given to the Indians by the United States for a hunting ground all the way over to the Black Hills. They discovered gold in the Black Hills, and of course people started coming by the hundreds on wagon trains through the Indian Territory. They were being attacked, so the United States government had to intercede. These are wild horses here that were everywhere, and so they sent out this army to take the women, the sick, and the elderly and move them to another location. And in doing so, they thought then the men would follow.
So when you read the signs around the park, and if you read the history of this battle, you'll know there are many questions that have arisen since the battle took place. Some question why it took place, when it took place, and the exact location of it.
Well, the men were separated in the first place. Custer separated the men, and so they were scattered throughout. The pack wagons got bogged down, and that's where half of their ammunition was in with the pack wagons. Their horses were tired, not like the Indian ponies that were fresh, and so the horses just gave out from underneath them at the time, and they used them then as shields. They had nothing to dig trenches with except their plates that they used, and so it was a very sad battle all along. The Indians were trying to protect the land that was given to them and their homes.
So the actual place of Custer's last stand was a battle of Custer and only 41 men. The men had been divided up and they were dispersed by the battle and by plans. The Indians were led by Crazy Horse. Sitting Bull stayed home that day on the advice of his mother. Isn't that surprising? Crazy Horse led the attack. The soldiers used up all of their ammunition for their rifles, pulled their Colts out, used the 6-shooters until they were done with those, and then it was hand-to-hand combat. But they were greatly outnumbered.
This is such a sad thing that happened. All of these young men, and I say young, I think about my 2 grandsons that are 17 and 20. They could have been in this battle. There were many young men that were 16 or even younger, and this is more of the headstones where they fell.
Yeah, they have actual names on these headstones.
Yes.
Well, you can see that right there.
Yes, right there. And so it's very sad, and it tugs at your heart to know that these young men gave their lives for our country.
About that day, there were about 263 soldiers that died. Nobody knows the exact number of the Indians, but it was about 60.
And here are more of the Indian headstones also, and it tells they were protecting their homeland, and that's what they were doing. But the really sad thing is, nobody won this battle. The Indians, of course, thought they did when this happened.
But just 1 year later,
yes,
1 year later, these Indians were moved to the reservation.
Yes. And so many men lost their lives, and the Indians were moved in the long run. So no one actually won.
This monument at the very end explains what the scouts saw and reported back to Custer and why he decided to attack when he did.
This is the site where other officers were told to go and they could watch and saw the actual finish of the battle. How sad that was as they looked out over the area. The beautiful rolling hillside as you looked out was just so pretty, and the roaming wild horses throughout the hills. You could just almost see this terrible battle go through as you drove along this road.
We call this the Battle of the Little Bighorn. The Indians called it the Battle of Greasy Grass. All throughout this area we see these headstones, and it's a reminder of the great area over which this battle took place and how the men were scattered when they fell. They were not all grouped, all 263 of them, in one group when they died.
This beautiful iron sculpture shows how the Indians celebrated this victory, how they went back to their camp with the women and children and celebrated. But it was a very short-lived celebration, as we said earlier, because they were moved to a reservation, something they did not want to happen, but it did. As we're driving out of the park, we not only reminded of the young men that gave their lives and the officers for our country, but also those that have given their lives through the years in other battles and wars that the United States, how they have protected us. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the Battle of Little Bighorn National Monument.
We did.
We did.
Much more than I had anticipated. It was great.
It really was. So if you're ever in the area, which is in southeastern Montana, around GARRYOWEN, please go to the monument. It is really worth your while.
And you know, one thing we did want to say is that we talked about that the cavalrymen being buried out there on site and in location. We just wanted to mention that George Custer is not buried here. His wife had him moved to West Point Academy. West Point Academy, and that's
so
where
he's buried there.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for watching. As usual, we really appreciate all of you.
Yeah, just be sure and subscribe, and you'll be notified of all future videos. And I just want to say God bless each and every one of you. And especially at this time, may God bless America.